Hello and welcome. You're listening to Historic Huguenot Street's weekly show on WFNP The Edge, where we discuss New Paltz history and the history of the Hudson Valley. I'm Kaitlin Gallucci, and I'm the Communications Manager at Historic Huguenot Street, which is a nonprofit 10-acre National Historic Landmark District dedicated to preserving historic buildings, artifacts, and manuscripts, and promoting the stories of the Huguenot Street families who founded New Paltz. If you missed our show last week with Huguenot Street's site supervisor Renzo Cinti and consulting historic preservationist Ken Follett, you can listen to it anytime on Historic Huguenot Street's SoundCloud and YouTube. As we also mentioned last week, tickets for our annual Haunted Huguenot Street tours are now available. These tours always sell out, so I encourage you to register soon, and you can do that at huguenotstreet.org/haunted. Tours begin tomorrow, actually, at 5 p.m., and will continue for the next 3 Fridays and Saturdays, hourly from 5 to 9 p.m. Every year, our Haunted Huguenot Street tours are different, and this year's will bring guests into 4 historic houses while exploring the history of oppression, particularly in the case of oppressed women in the 17th through 19th centuries. Tonight, I'm joined by Historic Huguenot Street's guest experience coordinator, Courtney Russo, who worked on developing this year's tours. Hi, Courtney.
Hi, Caitlin.
Thank you for joining me.
No problem. Happy to be here.
So first, can you tell us a bit about what you do as a guest experience coordinator?
Sure. So I actually got my master's degree in museum education last December, and part of kind of a museum education background is this frontline staff kind of world in the museum, and who do visitors interact with first. And that's really almost a forgotten part sometimes about the museum. You think about the development, you think about the director and the programs and the blah, 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 blah. But you don't, maybe frontline kind of gets overlooked a little bit. And so that's really what guest experience is about. And I really love what I do. I supervise the volunteers, both volunteer tour guides and, training them, hiring them, making changes to scripts, and really looking for feedback from visitors and how can we make the museum experience better at Huguenot Street.
Right. Great. Well, Haunted Huguenot Street is such an iconic event in New Paltz. How long have you been working on these tours, and what kind of research did you do?
So I've been working on Haunted Huguenot Street for about 2 months.
I'm not surprised.
So this is my first year working on haunted tours, and I feel like I had big shoes to fill. We've been doing these tours for so long, and for the last couple of years, we've always, not only have we always tried to make them better, but we have added this theatrical part to it that it didn't have in previous years. So the last, handful of years, last 3-ish years, we've been doing this, bringing to life the scenes that we're talking about. So reading, doing the research was both about reading the stories, the newspaper clippings, those kinds of things, but also reading past scripts and seeing what, how much information we're giving to people. I think the best part about our haunted tours in comparison to other Halloween-y things that happen in the Hudson Valley and abroad is that our haunted tours are based on history. These are real things that happened on Huguenot Street that, you do get a little taste of history as you're coming through the not so nice history.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's not, it's history in a different type of form that makes it like, it's a perfect example of making history fun. Really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So as you mentioned, the tours are always, based in reality and real stories or legends. So what were some of the most interesting stories that you found in your research? Or maybe what inspired you the most?
Yeah, I think some of the stories, it was hard because so I inherited this very large folder of lots of stories, and one of the first things I started to do as I was flipping through and being a little overwhelmed with how many stories we actually have, is I try to separate it by house. Maybe some of these stories are more specific to specific families. So there's one story that happened in the Du Bois Fort. And so our Du Bois Fort is now our visitor center, of course.
Right.
And there was a story that the woman who lived in the building that was then operated as a tavern. There was a woman who lived upstairs who owned and operated the tavern, and as she woke up one night, she went to use the bathroom, and there was a woman standing there in a brown robe and was headless.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's a very small story in comparison to another story where there was a rent collector, and the rent collector was in about, I think it was 1837 that comes to mind. So there was a rent collector, and he is going around and knocking on people's doors and collecting rent. And then all of a sudden he goes missing. No one had heard from him in a while, and then not too long later they found a horse's skeleton tied to a tree.
Oh, wow.
So, and they assumed that the horse's skeleton had belonged to the rent collector, but then no body was found.
I see, right.
So it was very interesting. So like a story like that wasn't connected to any specific house. And then, the shorter story.
Just a local legend.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that that is unique about our tours too, is that we're really highlighting those myths and legends. Our tour during the day is very much factual. Here's our evidence, here's where we found this,
right?
Whereas our myths and legends and more are these haunted stories.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you think about it, you can't completely discount a story that maybe people have been telling each other for generations,
right. Yeah.
Maybe we don't have, the evidence to back it up as we do with our historic tours, but, it's still a part of, in a certain way, a part of our town's history and our site's history, just in that, well, everybody's heard the story of the rent collector or something.
Right,
it's like,
right.
You haven't heard about the rent collector? Let me tell you.
Yeah, yeah, you've been living under a
Everyone
rock.
talks about it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because the other day I was just on site. I was outside the fort with Renzo and Alex, and a gentleman, just a local man, he lives nearby, was passing by, and he literally just stopped to talk to us because obviously we started setting up the haunted decor outside, so he knew what we were up to. And he was like, yeah, the story about this house? This is just a man who doesn't work at Huguenot Street. And he's like, the story about this house? Yeah, there's a woman who appears in the upstairs window. The story about this house? Every time I walk past it, I get a chill. And, it's these things that, people are very familiar with these stories. And a lot of people are familiar with, just the concept anyway. Everybody kind of wants to come see what's going on at Huguenot Street and if it's really haunted or not.
Yeah, people get connected to these houses.
Yes.
During the day when, they just fall in love with the house. It's beautiful, the story's great, whatever, which is nice. But then there's also that other part of they feel deeply connected to the house and in all of its stories. And maybe they've felt something in the house or something like that.
Yeah. Great. So I know we certainly don't want to spoil anything, but can you tell us a bit about the theme or anything about this year's tours?
Sure. So like you said, and like our webpage says, our tour does highlight many stories of the oppression of women. And, I think that was a real, it was an underlying theme that we kind of found as we were doing our research. we had picked out the stories that we would want to use. And, this story is really cool. We haven't done it in a while. How can we bring it to life? And as we were talking about which stories we wanted to use, we were trying to think of a connecting, trying to think of a transition between each house and, timeline and all those kind of logistical things that we realized that, there's a woman in each one. At first we thought of a justice system too, and a legal system, and what, how has the legal system and everything affected women.
Okay,
so that, I think that's how we kind of got to oppressed women. We've got some really great costumes this year.
Yes.
That's a big highlight. So I think that people will be very impressed with their effects and with our costumes and just the dramatic air of our wonderful theater people that are helping us out this year.
Definitely. I mean, so obviously you and I just came from a rehearsal, a dress rehearsal, and even having already been at Huguenot Street for a while, but I'm always impressed by the production value. I mean, I think, and I really think that guests often when they come are also impressed because you maybe didn't necessarily expect that from your little local historic site,
Right.
But we really go all out for this.
Yes, it's not just your typical tour. It's not
not at all.
It's not the guide leading you around and telling you some stories, which we've done in the past, and that that works.
Yeah. There's some value to that. I mean, for sure, some people just want to hear scary stories.
Yeah, and those are cool. But I think what makes us kick it up a notch.
Yes.
Is that extra theatrical production value that you get a little impressed. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I think you touched on this a little bit, but so how do you go about putting something like this together? Like once you choose your stories, I know you mentioned, then kind of considering how do these go together? What would be a good transition to bring people from one house to the next? But so, what are kind of your next steps to like translate these stories into something that guests get to experience?
Yeah, I think that that was a little challenging for me. I won't lie. I do not have a theater background.
To be honest here.
I was involved in like high school theater and stuff, but I've never written a play before, which is what I felt like I was getting myself into. So I was a little nervous.
Right. It's a little like screenwriting, it seems.
Yeah. Who moves when and who says what when.
Oh, stage directions. Wow.
Yeah. So once we chose the stories we wanted to use, and once we knew, what our theme was, the next step was about, so how does the guide say less and show more? And does that mean that what does the guide do, and who is the guide? We've had guides play a certain role before.
That's right.
And that's not the case this year.
Right.
It is a woman, since we are focusing on women on the street.
Relevant.
But so that part was really, really, really helpful. I'll shout out to all my my guides that helped me out a little bit, who helped write this script. And without them, we wouldn't have the tour that we have tonight and coming up this year. So it was really helpful for them to be sitting around a table with me and saying, okay, well, this story is about, a bride. So, we should have a bride. We should have the bride doing something.
Sure.
So what is that scene going to look like? And, we are talking about witches and witchcraft. And so do we have a witch? Does the witch do something? And so those are the kinds of conversations that we had in order to kind of show, not tell, is what we're trying to do here. And I think that makes it more dynamic. There's more things going on. You're almost involved, not quite, as a guest. Yeah.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I always kind of love that element. It's like, it's almost, it's not like when you go see a performance and say the cast is up on a stage and you're in, audience seats. Like, you're on the same level as them. They typically the performances aren't as if you're not in the room. It's like the characters or the cast sees you during Haunted. Like, they recognize that you're there. It's not necessarily fully participatory, but it's not like you don't exist as a guest.
Right. Which I think is really important because, so like I said, I have museum education background, and with that, I've studied visitors and how they react to this kind of involvement in museums. And so how do people react by if a guide directly asks a visitor a question? Very shyer people aren't gonna want to respond, of course, but then you've got the more outgoing people who are very willing to participate.
We've seen both.
Exactly. So it's we like to try to find a balance where, having the actors right in front of you does have that almost involved element, but we're not calling on a visitor to do any specific thing. So you don't have to feel uncomfortable on our haunted tours, which I think is really important.
Yeah, definitely. So I do want to mention, because obviously, of course, we're on SUNY New Paltz campus, we're on the SUNY New Paltz radio station, that some of those great volunteers and participants that you mentioned before, a lot of those are SUNY New Paltz students and graduates, correct?
They are, and I love them so.
I do too. They've been so helpful to us.
Yeah, they have.
Most, if not all, from the theater department here?
I'd say yeah. Yeah.
I think probably all, or at least some participation in the theater department.
Yes. All of the guides that are with me during the day that are involved in Haunted are all from the theater department.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. So that's great because then they did have that, they have that level of experience. And I think that that's what's been also transformative for our tours in the past few years. Because I think, historically speaking, in the past, our tour guides were probably most often, the type of person that you think of when you think of the word volunteer, someone with a lot of free time. Yes. Nothing wrong with that. We love them too. But then in the past few years, we built up this relationship with the theater department and started, getting them involved. And I think it's just transformed some of our programs like Haunted because they have that experience about how to tell a story in words and action.
Right. And I think that there are not only does Huguenot Street benefit from this relationship where our haunted tours are super awesome because of them.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have little to no experience before writing this tour with them. Our tour would not be what it is.
Well, now you're
without
a pro,
them.
though.
I like to think so.
Yeah.
They've definitely shown me the way.
Yeah.
But the really important thing that I wanted to show those folks that are involved this year is that Huguenot Street cares about them too. That we want them to have as much ownership in this tour this year as possible. Like you said, so there are involved SUNY students that are current SUNY students, but there are also graduates, and so I'm really trying to help beef up their resume.
Exactly. Now they can put on their resume that they helped literally write this tour.
Exactly. So they've written this tour, they've researched the tour, they've acted in it, they've done the dress rehearsal, they've done all these kinds of stage makeup, all those classes that they have, they're putting to the test, and they can say that they've done this, and they can take away this script and show, a potential employer that here's something that I really took part in.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, definitely. So right now we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to WFNP The Edge. Hi, and welcome back. You're listening to Historic Huguenot Street's weekly program on WFNP The Edge. I'm Kaitlin Gallucci, and I'm joined tonight by Historic Huguenot Street's guest experience coordinator, Courtney Russo, who worked on developing this year's Haunted Huguenot Street tours. So this is a favorite time of year for a lot of us, probably all of us. Given your role helping to create these tours, I was wondering, what are you most looking forward to? Is there a part of the tour that you're most eager to see, maybe outside of a rehearsal? Because I just realized as I was asking that you have seen it already.
Yes, we did some rehearsals last night, which was fun because I got to be a visitor. I was trying to see it all play out. Tonight we were short some people, so
Right.
I stepped in nonchalantly and tried to play some roles.
Oh, that's right, you did, yes.
So I think I'm most looking forward to see visitors' reactions, though.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to be impressed,
Yeah.
and I really hope that we've lived up to those expectations, because our haunted tours sell out every year.
Yes.
That's pretty awesome.
Yes.
Our they cost a certain amount of money, and people are investing their Halloween season in Huguenot Street,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really excited that they choose us.
Yeah.
So I'm most looking forward to seeing their reaction, and I'll actually be a guide one of those nights.
Oh, nice.
So I will get
you'll
to
have
see.
a front row seat.
So I'll get to see those
Yeah.
fun visitor reactions. So it'll be good. Yeah.
That'll be great. Cool. Now, a very popular question. We get asked this all the time. I literally was asked this question by my intern this week. And that question is, of course, is Huguenot Street really haunted? What's the most haunted house? So I'm wondering, have you, we've chatted about this a little bit, of course, but have you personally experienced anything kind of out of the ordinary or paranormal while on Huguenot Street?
So
This is what the world wants to know.
I know. So here's the thing. I've been at Huguenot Street since April, so
Right.
not very long. When I first started, no one told me any haunted stories first, so shout out to my wonderful staff for not doing that to me. I am the person who works weekends. So I am the person who's closing the houses every night. So I'm very glad, again, that they did not scare me originally. It wasn't until I first started reading these haunted stories, and it was actually
Right.
either the last week in July or the first week in August. So very light outside, very hot, it's summer, not thinking about scary stuff
Right.
normally. But when you start to read all these stories, you start to feel things.
Yeah.
You start to hear weird noises, and you shut the lights off in the house, and you think you see something. And it's a little terrifying.
Yeah.
I like to say that there are power in numbers, and so I'm not scared
Yes.
when someone's with me.
Mhm.
But as soon as I'm by myself, I'm looking over my shoulder, like,
Right.
yeah,
I gotta say,
yeah.
I feel like it's very sweet. I noticed how the tour has also been structured, I feel like specifically for this reason, so that
Yes.
no cast member is ever left alone in a house.
Absolutely.
Because obviously, some people, they move between houses, or if they're done with a scene, they have to, they stay there and wait for the next tour, because the tours go out every hour, and they'll see another person in 40 minutes or so.
Right.
But you do make sure that no one is ever alone, which is a
Yes.
great point. Because
Yeah.
we have, those tour guides are on the front line. We've had, and people have stories.
Yes. Yeah.
As
yeah.
you've had to, you've read many years worth of them.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that, not only that, but it's safety thing. Like, It is
Very
dark
true.
outside. It is Halloween time, and we care about our employees and our volunteers, that
Yes.
we don't want them to get scared or anything like that.
Yeah, because we have the, admittedly, our museum is made up of houses, so sometimes you will have the stray pedestrian think that they can just come up
Yes.
or knock on the door and see if anyone's home. And honestly, probably when you're waiting for your next tour, that would probably scare you.
Absolutely. We were actually doing that last night. We were in we were in the Jean Hasbrook house for rehearsal, and we were almost done, and we were in one of the rooms, and then all of a sudden I hear a knock at the door, and we all looked at each other like, that was creepy.
Yeah,
So
that's not in the script.
Exactly. So I go to quote unquote answer the door, and the front door no one was at. They were actually at the back door. And so I went at the back door, and these two people were like, "Oh, we thought there were actual spirits in there." And I was like, "It's 7 o'clock at night.
It's just us, yeah.
So I shamelessly, plugged our haunted tours to them.
Of course.
But you're right. People will just walk up and want to know what's in there.
Yeah, you never know. People, peeking in windows and stuff. It's a great point that, there are multiple reasons for people to not be left alone. So now that we've scared people...
I hope we haven't scared them too much.
No, not at all.
One of the disclaimers I definitely want to say is that nothing jumps out at you on this tour.
Oh, yes, exactly. Right. This is not one of those types of...
No.
It's not that type of tour.
No. I mean, it's definitely unsettling, and it's supposed to be haunted.
Right.
But it is... it's not one of those boo... someone's going to come out and grab you kind of places.
Yeah. That's good. So, as a final note, kind of, you're usually, I know you accept interns and volunteers in your department. I'm sure you're probably already, all good on in terms of haunted, but how can people get involved normally?
So yeah, we definitely all set with haunted for this year since we start tomorrow. But technically our season ends in December.
Right.
So we are no longer open 6 days a week as of Halloween. So November and December we go to being open on the weekends. And then we're closed from January to the first weekend of May. So the real way to get involved is to be involved in our school tours and our group tours.
Oh, yes.
So I am...
Because those are year-round.
Yeah, yeah. So as the guest experience coordinator, I'm in charge of all things tours. So, when the Rhodes Scholars want to come to Huguenot Street, we need guides for them, of course. And so that is really what I welcome as a part of my department. Is learning the history, of course, of the basic history about the street and how it's evolved, and then more specifics about each house and things like that. And, we're going to be changing the tour a little bit, and, we've, different highlights and things like that. So I think that there's definitely room to grow.
Yeah.
So.
Great. Well, Courtney, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Again, tickets for Haunted Huguenot Street are now available. These tours always sell out, so again, please register soon, and you can do that at huguenotstreet.org/haunted. Tours will be going on for the last 3 Fridays and Saturdays of the month, beginning tomorrow, hourly from 5 to 9 p.m., and every year our Haunted Huguenot Street tours are different, and as we've discussed this year, we'll bring guests into 4 historic houses while exploring the history of oppression, particularly in the case of oppressed women in the 17th through 19th centuries. And as usual, we will close the street to vehicular traffic for our annual trick-or-treating on Halloween night from 4 to 6 p.m., just before the New Paltz Halloween Parade. Our Haunted Huguenot Street programming this year is sponsored by America's Best Value Inn, the 1850 House Inn and Tavern, the accounting offices of Tom Facito, and Ulster Savings Bank. We're wrapping up now, but listeners can tune in every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. for the rest of the semester at WFNP.org or 88.7 FM to hear more from Historic Huguenot Street. Visit HuguenotStreet.org for information on all of our upcoming events. You can also follow us on social media and sign up for our email list to stay informed on what's happening on the street. Thanks for listening.